Hey everyone, welcome to the Stride to Freedom podcast. My name is Russell Benaroya, and I'm the co-founder of Stride Services, a virtual back-office bookkeeping and accounting firm serving hundreds of clients around the United States. This podcast is designed to help small business owners focus on growth and innovation. In other words, focus on those things that inspired you to start your business in the first place. We call it your genius zone. We do our job on this podcast when business owners feel like they have the trust and confidence to build the right team of partners around them that will help them grow. Thanks for joining. Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Stride to Freedom podcast, where we help business leaders get and stay in their genius zone. My name is Russell Benaroya, and I am your podcast host. You may be wondering, what is your genius zone? Well, your genius zone is that thing that you do where people say, oh my gosh, that's your superpower, or you lose track of time, or if you could do it forever and not worry about getting paid, like that's what you want to keep doing because you're exceptionally unique at what you do. And if we can help people unlock their genius zone by bringing guests on the podcast to help you spend more time in it, that is success for us here at the Stride to Freedom podcast. The Stride to Freedom podcast is sponsored by Stride Services. Stride Services is an outsourced back office bookkeeping, accounting, and fractional CFO services firm serving marketing agencies, outsourced IT managed service providers, and other consulting firms around the United States. What is Stride's Genius Zone? Well, Stride's Genius Zone is helping business owners embed data into their business decision-making so that they can achieve their highest and best use. Okay, enough of that. Let's jump into the show. I am so pleased that we have the opportunity today to talk to Cliff McDonald. Hey, Cliff. Oh, I caught you while you were drinking water.
Hey, Russell. How are you?
Great. Nice to see you. Cliff is the managing partner and founder of Brainheart Growth. And here's what Brainheart Growth does. Brainheart Growth helps companies accelerate revenue. They also help companies improve sales morale, and he'll talk about that. They also help companies realize the value that they are creating and achieving an attractive exit for the owner. But the name Brainheart Growth really says it all, and this is why I was so excited to talk to Cliff. Cliff and his team aren't just running a formula to walk people through a sales process. They start with the human being. They guide clients to create an environment that is safe and nurturing for their clients so they feel safety and willing to explore, but also lead with candor and continuous learning. And I think we'll hear about Brainheart's approach toward guiding companies with sales leadership in a minute. I invited Cliff on the show because I knew within the first minute that I met Cliff that he had a certain magic about him, a certain disposition, a way that I believe that translates into how he works with clients. And I'm really interested in learning more about his approach. So let's go. Cliff, what do you say? You ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, let's do it, Russell. Thank you.
Okay. I know you come from like a pretty athletic background. I think as I was trolling your LinkedIn, did I see like your dad is in the Athletic Hall of Fame at UNH? And were you a football player? What's your illustrious athletic prowess?
Yeah, well, it's not so illustrious, but yeah, absolutely. I was a student athlete growing up, and I did have the opportunity to play after high school. So I played at Dartmouth College up in Hanover, New Hampshire. I played football. Through high school, I was a football player and a wrestler. And I was actually probably a better wrestler, but I really enjoyed football. I loved playing football. And yeah, my dad was a much better athlete than me, a phenomenal, gifted athlete. My dad was an All-American college football player at the University of New Hampshire.
Wow.
And my dad was also the New England heavyweight boxing champion, which he did without ever having an amateur boxing match. So my dad grew up in South Boston, working class Irish Catholic neighborhood. Southie, made popular by Good Will Hunting and Whitey
Yes.
Bulger. So my dad estimates that he had a couple hundred street fights growing up as a kid, and his grandfather was 82nd Airborne, World War II veteran. So my grandpa taught my dad how to box. So my dad, after he got out of college, actually, as a part-time job, became a professional boxer. Kind of funny. So,
Wow. I love it. Just to add a little additional texture to who is Cliff McDonald, you also received a certificate in positive applied psychology from the University of Pennsylvania a couple of years ago. And I'm curious why you did that and why was it important to you to pursue it?
yeah. So, yeah, interesting, Russell. You talked about it early, right? The name of our firm, Brainheart Growth, and I am the managing partner and the founder. So this was kind of my concept and my idea. I'd been a partner in a consulting firm that did work very similar to Brainheart Growth, and my experience in kind of the corporate world was one of, I thought it was very impersonal, and I come from kind of blue collar working class people. Early in my career, I was in finance and in technology. In like the mid 90s, right? It was kind of the height of political correctness. Some people would argue that we're kind of getting back there. But having been a former competitive athlete, I was used to getting coached up really hard and really personal. And I felt like my coaches and my good teachers always wanted to know who I was on a human level, right? Where are you from? What's your background? What was your family dynamic like? How are you motivated? How are you inspired? And I thought that that was missing in the corporate world. So I was a psych major in undergrad. I didn't set any records in the classroom in undergrad, by the way, but I was a psychology major. I love studying people. I think what I really am is an organizational behaviorist. I love studying team dynamics. And I'm fascinated with what makes certain teams thrive and win championships and what makes other teams, oftentimes equally as talented, struggle and not win championships. So after I did my undergrad in psych, I ended up going into business. I went back to school and did an MBA. So I formally studied business. And then when we started the firm, there were a couple of areas where I thought I didn't really know as much as I should know. And I just stumbled across positive psychology. Positive psychology is the study of what goes right in life. Pretty cool. The scientific study of what goes right in life. And we want to nurture, we want to develop, we want to train, we want to like even love these people up, right? So I thought this would be really cool to explore this formally, right? And see if we can include some of these concepts with how we're developing what we call, Russell, elite revenue generation teams, right? Selling is extremely hard, extremely hard. I think it's the most unique combination of skills to be good at this gig. It's really, really difficult. So I thought, how cool is it? And I've always thought that emphasizing character strengths was much more effective than focusing on weaknesses, right? Let's take what we already have and use those to our advantage. So positive psychology is right up my alley. It's only about a 20-year-old field, and the program at the University of Pennsylvania, it's the best in the world. It's founded by Dr. Martin Seligman, is considered the father of the field. And I love this stuff, man. This is my jam for sure.
Well, it's my jam too. So I'm going to enjoy asking more questions about it. How about this refrain from a business owner? Yeah, Cliff, we really need some sales help. You know, I'm just not a great sales guy. Like I just don't really like sales that much. Do you ever hear that from a business owner?
All the time.
So take that, right? And now talk about what you create, which is elite sales teams, and also talk about the alchemy of what why it's such a great opportunity and challenge to create great sales people juxtaposed against business owners that are like, yeah, I'm just not good at sales.
Yeah, sure. So Russell, I think there's so many myths, right, about sales, and we use a methodology. So our firm is actually me, I'm the only one, but we're a certified gap selling training partner, right? And that's a methodology that we think is the best methodology that's available. It's modern, it's new, it's heavy on psychology. So there's so many sales myths, right? One of them is salespeople just kind of exist and they're born. That's really not true. They're made, right? And they're made with a commitment to the craft, right? Just like you have to learn how to have great technique with shooting free throws or a golf swing or whatever it is, you have to learn how to sell, right? And we focus on the mid-market. Most mid-market companies don't even have a methodology.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine going out and trying to run a successful football offense without a playbook?
Mm-hmm.
It's insane. It really is, right? You have to have a playbook. You have to have a methodology. So that's the first thing, right? Like, are you using a process? Are you refining the process? Are you teaching the process? Are you coaching the process? Are you committed to the process? Second, old psychologist Daniel Pink. Are you familiar with Daniel Pink?
Yes.
Right. So he's a great author, right? He wrote a book a long time ago, To Sell is Human. And he taught us that if you give people a word association, Russell, what's the first word that comes to mind when you hear the word salesperson? It's very negative associations, right? And that's kind of a relic of the old sales guy who's in your face, who's going to pitch you stuff, who's going to try and sell you things that you don't really need. So there's this kind of negative association with sales. So you don't see people saying, I love being a salesperson, right? Like I'm a sales, some people, right? But what do you define selling as? Is it, and if you buy into that, I'm a nuisance, I'm bothering people, right? Then it's not going to be that much fun. So the mindset is so important. And I'm blessed because I kind of got this organically when I was in tech in like the late 90s and early 2000s. I realized, and I actually had a couple of good managers there, right, that helped me understand this. It's helping. Like you say, you don't want to sell. That's weird, Russell. Do you like helping people?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Oh,
what
yes,
it is.
absolutely. Oh, I love
For
helping
sure,
people.
right? So you've built some IP in your business, right? You've got some things, some resources that are specific to your organization. You have some capital, you've made some investments, whatever it is. Probably call them products or services. Do you want to help as many people as you can with what you've built?
Absolutely.
Right. That's selling.
Yeah.
That's it. So you got to change the mindset. It's easy to do that when you have a methodology that is focused on problem-centric selling. That's what our methodology is, right? As opposed to product-centric, where I'm, show up and throw up. You're giving them the pitch, right? You're selling the same thing to everyone in the same way, regardless of their environment. That's old school. That doesn't work, right? So this is really high-level, consultative, problem-centric selling, and it's awesome. But it's this is a big commitment to changing the way we do it. And it's really heavy in discovery, right? So we want to really be extremely curious. You have to really, really love business. Like I'm really excited to learn how this business works and where they're broken, right? And then after a really lengthy, deep discovery, then and only then can we prescribe, right? Okay, I think we can help you. Here's how. So you kind of changing the whole thing, right? And people that kind of buy into this and get it, and you can see that kind of shift, like, no, I am the furthest thing in the world from a nuisance or bothering someone, right? And I can take tremendous pride in this craft, right? Because I get to solve big problems and help people all the time.
So is problem selling a core tenet of the concept of gap selling? Maybe explain what gap selling constitutes.
Yeah, so gap selling, and when we started the firm, Russell, we thought we're going to build our own sales methodology,
Yeah.
right? Because we hadn't really found one that we really thought was fantastic, right? So before we did that, I kind of looked around and I stumbled across Keenan, who's the
Mm-hmm.
author of Gap Selling, and he's an awesome entrepreneur. He's a great brand builder. And I found him on LinkedIn and I just started following him. And I really liked it. And I liked the messaging. And then I learned that they were actually starting a new partner program. And I was one of the first ones to raise my hand and said I'd be interested in that. And I think I was the second certified gap selling training partner. But yeah, that's so there's kind of foundational principles of gap selling. One is a shift from product centric selling to problem centric selling. The other one is it's not like close this thing, man. I get 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? And salespeople
Use them in
yap,
direct
yap, yap,
proportion.
kind of, right? And shift into like really asking great questions, right? Can we help these people? And you have to dive really deep. So the gap, right? Spoiler alert, Russell, is the space between the current state and the future state. That's where the value is created, right? The current state runs deep. So we don't want to just get kind of a small window into your current state at your bit. We want to go deep, 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 deep. It might be 5 discovery calls. I might talk to people from HR, right? From finance, from sales, to really understand your environment. Then and only then, when I've discovered you've got a big business problem, the impact is deep and wide, and we can identify the root cause. The root cause is always simple. That's a technical problem, easy to fix. Then and only then will we even start to prescribe something. Okay, we think we can help you. It's great. It's really good. I think we'll look back like years from now. Gap selling is very new, and there's a lot of people that are already on board with it. I think, and there's a great young community. I think that's gonna continue to grow, and we'll see a lot more people adopting this approach.
Why did you decide to focus on mid-market, and what do you define as mid-market?
Yeah, great question. Really, because I love underdogs and I always have, right? And I love helping people that I think need more help. And my parents were both teachers, right? And I grew up, again, working class, right? That's kind of my roots. And I grew up around a lot of people that enjoyed helping other people, right? Teachers, coaches, what have you. It takes a village, that kind of mentality. I was blessed, Russell. I got to work on Wall Street, right? I worked for big Fortune 500 firms with abundant resources, right? I went through an IPO with a company. I got an MBA for a company that I worked for. So those guys kind of have everything. I don't think Cliff can help those companies that much, right? But if I've got a $5 million company that is CEO founder led, and they've failed with 3 salespeople that they tried to develop into salespeople, and they're stuck, and they don't have a marketing strategy, they don't have a go-to-market strategy, they don't have diversified sources to get leads, they don't even have a CRM system, right? When I see a company like that, I love it because I'm like, man, we can have a real significant impact on these folks, right? So that's why we like it there, right? And even though, as you know, Russell, getting to be a $2 million company, you got to have something to get there, right? So how we would define that, and I would say we are lower mid-market. So I think like 2 to 20 million in annual revenue, or 5 to 50 million. That's how I've heard some other people kind of package this space. We do work with startups too, hopefully well-funded startups, right? But we're also creative and flexible. So our business model, Russell, long-term, what we want to do is take equity positions, right? So we love being in early. And if people think that we're a valuable partner, we don't talk about this in a phase one engagement, but if they feel like we're a valuable partner and we're teaching them and coaching them and helping them to go to kind of places they haven't been before in a positive way, we talk about equity. And we've taken a few equity positions. Long term, we want a portfolio of brands that we've got skin in the game with, which is cool.
Yeah.
Right. So it's fun. And then what happens is you develop almost an ecosystem, right? So we've got client partners now. That's what we call our customers, client partners. We've got client partners that can help each other. And we can introduce them to each other sometimes. So long term, I think what we'll end up being is a private equity company, but kind of from the ground up, right? From an operating partner perspective.
I'd love to see you create, if you haven't already, like a peer group around your client partners that come together with some shared accountability around executing some of this great gap selling learning that you're teaching.
Yeah, for sure. So we just had, we just started doing a quarterly summit.
Okay.
And we do that. We're a small team. We've got, 5 partners. And we invited some of our client partners to it for the first time in Q2. And we had like 20, 25 people. And we spent a day together and it was awesome, man.
Cool.
So yeah, so I think that's going to become a thing and we'll invite more people. And now, hopefully post pandemic, right? We can do that in person.
Yeah.
And I love the concept of ecosystem, right? You've got these, folks that are passionate, right? They're growing their businesses. They want to share, right? And grow together, and you bring them all together. That's the magic, man, right? That's the good stuff. So I do hope that we'll do a lot more of that.
What about this comment that you might get, Cliff? I've tried to hire salespeople. I have not been successful. I just don't know if anybody can sell our service other than me. And that scares me, Cliff, because I want to work. I want to rise above this business. Like I started this business so that I could have some semblance of freedom, but in fact, I actually feel like I'm totally stuck in it because I can't figure out how somebody sells our service better than me. Can you help me? You ever hear that?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So no offense to any business owner.
No offense.
Right? Or a CEO founder. But many of them think their business is more complicated than it is. And they think it's more nuanced and special than it is truly. So we can always train someone. Are you a good teacher? Are you a good coach? Right? And have you really tried to develop these people? The answer is usually no. Because, that CEO founder who has been the only salesperson a lot of times, right? He or she also is doing product development, right? And is doing finance and human resources, right? And what are the core values of the company? And they just happen to be a good salesperson, a good undertrained salesperson who built the thing they're selling too. So they've got a great story, right? Absolutely. But if you invest in those are a lot of our engagements, truly, where we are really helping to create the first sales team, or sometimes even the first salesperson that isn't the CEO founder. And you do that in a deliberate, intentional fashion, right? And you repeat the process over and over again. And what happens is 2 things. It's interesting. The CEO founder is excited when someone else gets that first deal that isn't him or her, right? And they're like, whoa, this is awesome. It's a whole new world. But then they also kind of realize like, oh, I'm not that special.
I'm not important anymore. Yeah.
Kind of my company and my company is not that unique and not that different. But as you know, though, that's when you really can get into that hockey stick curve shape that we all want, right? Because Russell, you're familiar with the OS, right? Traction.
Yes.
Right. The visionary and the operator, right, are never the same person, right? So those CEO founders, when you can free them up to be the visionary right? And really dedicate all the toward, product development, right? Maybe building channels. And you've got a sales team that you can rely on, man, that is a whole new world.
It just feels good letting that drape over me. What do you find yourself telling your clients to stop doing versus start doing?
To stop doing. So to stop doing, a lot of them are doing things just because it's the way they do it. That's the way it's always been done.
Totally.
In the lower mid-market, Russell, there's so many opportunities to get better, right? And I mentioned I went back to school personally and studied two things. One was positive psychology. The other one was digital marketing, right? And if you have not used digital marketing to grow your brand, right, and you're stop doing the way you used to do it, right, to get MQLs, right? I mean, it's just the world is your marketplace, truly, right? And most lower mid-market companies have done seriously less than 1% of the things that they can do to leverage this thing called the World Wide Web, which I think is going to stick around. You heard it here first.
Yeah, I've heard of this thing. It sounds big.
Yeah, so that I think is possibly the most unexplored area for these lower mid-market businesses. So stop doing things the way you used to regarding new opportunities. How do you find prospects? Use the internet. And there are 12 different ways to begin with to use the internet to get new engagement, right? And marketing is so broad now, right? You've got different social media channels, you've got email nurturing campaigns, you've got Google ads, pay-per-click, right? There's so many different ways that you can use this to generate new opportunities for your business to grow. But you've got companies that, they're still going to those 2 conferences every year. And that is their only lead source. Crazy.
So let me pile on this one, and I'm going to ask my question a slightly different way, which is, what do you see are often your clients' blind spots, right? They don't see it. Like one thing you just shared, they don't see that there's another way to acquire customers. Do they tend to have any other blind spots that make them their greatest obstacle to breaking through?
Yep. So a few blind spots, right? So you can sell in a number of different ways, right? Most smaller companies sell direct, one-to-one, right? Seller to buyer, right? One of the things I learned in the Fortune 1000 space many years ago is channel partnerships. Huge. So we'd call that indirect selling, right? And you can go upstream, find a partner that's a little bit bigger than you or a lot bigger than you that can benefit from what you do. And they might already have an existing client base of thousands of customers, right? Go to market with them and set up a revenue sharing deal or something like that, right? So we don't see lower mid-market companies typically leveraging channel partnerships. You can build them, right? And there's absolutely a win-win theory, right? We want to develop theories like, hey, Russell, I think my firm might do something that actually could help your existing business and your clients. Love to explore that with you. And that can be, again, in flexibility, right? And creativity with revenue models is another one. There could be a revenue sharing model, right? We're going to bring this together and it's a 90-10 split, whatever it might be, right? So that would be a blind spot. You don't sell just directly. Explore channel partnerships and get really creative right? And you can have a sales force tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of people that they don't wear your hat, but they can help you grow your business. Second, there's specialization within a sales organization, right? And a lot of times these lower mid-market companies, they have people who they expect to be hunters and farmers.
Right.
Are you familiar with that term, Russell? Hunter
Yes,
and farmer?
but please, yes, and please for our listeners, explain it.
Yeah, so we call a hunter, right? Which I think is the hardest job, right? It takes such a unique skill set to be an effective hunter. This is a person on the sales team who is bringing in new logos, right? These are companies that have never spent a dime with us, ever. And we have to get to the point where they say, yeah, we're writing you a check. We're wiring you some money because we find you so valuable. Really hard to do, especially think today with all of the messages we get. The battle for engagement, right? Even getting a call, it's so hard.
Super hard.
Right? So that hunting job is extremely difficult, right? Farming is a salesperson who is managing existing relationships, right? We call that, account management, right? Account executive. Those are two very different skill sets. Land and expand is wonderful, right? So I've got 10 existing relationships that I manage. The goals are number one, no churn, right? Keep them happy. Don't compromise the base of revenue that we already have, but find other ways to help them, right? And Russell, the blind spot is that most people are farmers.
Yeah.
It's easier. It's way easier, right? And when you ask a farmer to hunt, they're not excited to do it typically, and they're not good at it typically. You got to find these people who are chomping at the bit to do that really difficult pipeline building, creative outbound. These are just grinders, man. Right? So those would be two big blind spots, right? The direct, no channel development, right? And then hunters and farmers not being really clearly defined.
Where do you find grinders?
It's hard. It's really hard. So you talked about hiring, right? And Russell, I'm going to mention here, just so you know, and listeners, we bought a sales recruiting company the beginning of this year.
Okay.
So we don't identify as a recruiting agency, but we do place salespeople. We don't place IT people. We don't place HR people, only salespeople. And we're working on some proprietary tools that we use on the front end to assess these people, we think, in more meaningful and predictive ways than is being done right now, right? So there's a lot of misunderstandings. Russell, think about how you get a sales job today. It's so broken, and we wonder why the sales turnover is crazy. Billions and billions of dollars in missed sales hires. We see it all the time. Here's the process. Russell, you're a sales candidate, right? And I'm a hiring manager. Send me your resume. Right away, we're starting with fake information. Wow, this guy looks awesome. He's never missed quota in 12 years of selling, right? So I'm starting with a piece of paper that is not an accurate portrayal of who you are. I don't get anything about your character defects, your areas of weakness, your failures, right? Now, all I get is the good stuff that you've packaged for me.
Yeah, I'm selling you.
Hey, even a bad salesperson can have a good interview. And then, Russell, what you do, your first interview is with HR.
Right.
Who know nothing about selling. And then they pass him on. They're like, oh, he's great. He's made quota. He's got a great degree from a nice school. He's really friendly and he loves to talk, suggesting that might have something to do with being a good salesperson. Zero correlation with any of that stuff. Then you're passed on to a hiring manager who's got the screws on him because he's missing his number. He's looking for a warm body. And like the employee has all the leverage in the labor market right now.
Yeah.
So he has another good interview. He's like, all right, I'm going to take a shot at this guy because I'm behind and I got 2 empty seats on my team. And then the guy comes on board, or the gal, right? They're not nurtured, they're not trained, they're not coached. 6 months in, they quit. And it's a revolving door. And then you start again. Like, that's a 6-figure miss always.
Yeah.
Right. And it's brutal. Right. So back to your question, how do we identify that hunter? Right. For me, right, I look at the intangibles. I don't care where you went to school at all. I don't care what industries you've been in. What I do care about is, how hungry are you? How inspired are you? How are you inspired? Are you a problem solver? One crazy thing, Russell, which people be like, what? I want to know if you are a curious person. Do you really have an inherent desire to understand this person's business? If you don't, you're not going to work out with the methodology that we use. You have to really understand, like, I want to understand that business to see if we can help them. Not, I want to hit my quota.
Right.
Not, I want to make 300 grand this year and go to President's Club. That's all garbage. That's like yesterday's salesperson. This is really different. So we're super excited about this. We think eventually we'll never get it 100%. But if we can make progress and say, you know what, we can help you reduce sales turnover 10%, 20%. One of the things I love doing, Russell, is testing people for their character strengths. That's a positive psychology thing. I don't know if you're familiar with the VIA Institute, Values in Action Institute. So this organization, so Russell, you got to check this out. I think it was founded in like 2008. It's a nonprofit, and it was created. It's the culmination of like 3 years of work with tons of grant money. They got like the best psychologists in the world to get together and collaborate and really discover what all cultures across time and place have valued from people. Really, really cool. Right. And what they, so you're looking like Far East, 1,000 years ago, right? Like Mexico, like Asia, Eskimos, whatever, present day, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, since we've had like literature from these cultures, what do we value as a species, as humanity, right? And we've learned that there's kind of 6 core buckets, right? And they're wisdom, courage, humanity, justice, temperance, and transcendence. Wisdom, courage, humanity, justice, temperance, and transcendence. The 6 core virtues that everyone says, yeah, it's cool to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
And within that, there's 24 kind of subcategories. So you can go to the VIA Institute character and take a survey and find out what are your character strengths. So I love knowing that. And Russell, I was surprised I did this. My top character strength, I was so surprised when this came back, was kindness. Kindness, gratitude, hope, curiosity, and fairness. Right? And the reason why I was surprised, Russell, is because the culture I grew up in, that kind of working class, like warrior culture, football player, tough guy, especially in the Northeast.
Yeah.
You get a real heavy load of that. It was not really promoted to me as a teenage male in that culture that being kind was cool. Almost more cool. Be like a badass, be tough, be whatever, right? But I'm super excited that, right? It means I've come a long way, I think, right? And that was always there. But kindness too is awesome. Like because that's like really correlated with wanting to help. Right. And I think that's at the end of the day what we're going to see, which is what really good long-term sustainable salespeople want to do. They want to help people.
I like the idea of taking that assessment. We'll put that in the show notes. I'll get the link from you and make sure we get it in there and can take it. That's available online?
Yeah, it's free.
You mean that World Wide Web thing that you were talking about earlier that's going to stick around? You think that's
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Um, how do how does a company work with you? They reach out to you. Better question. How do you work with clients?
Yeah. So our most common engagement is a fractional executive leadership role,
Okay.
usually a fractional chief growth officer or a
Okay.
fractional chief revenue officer are most common. Um, and typically the way we set that up, Russell, is it's a fixed retainer, right?
Hmm.
A monthly fee. We always start with a kind of a low risk, shorter term 90-day engagement. We call it a phase one engagement. Even with this thorough discovery, we use the methodology that we teach, right? Gap
Yeah.
selling, we do a thorough discovery. But we're always going to learn more after we start working together. And a big thing there is like, we want to make sure it's a good fit. Fit is really important, right? Cultural fit is really important. Do we get along, right? And that doesn't mean that we don't disagree. There needs to be healthy disagreement and we need to challenge each other. But are we truly aligned, right? From a value perspective, right? And core value alignment is really important. And then if that goes well, and most of our phase one engagements have gone well, we'll extend into a phase two engagement. And we found, Russell, that for us to really be effective, we think it's usually like an 18 to 24-month kind of thing. We've extended even beyond that with some early clients that we had. And along the way, we do start talking too about equity.
Hmm. Hmm. Let me ask you maybe the most important question that I could ask you, which is, you owned an Irish pub and restaurant for 15 years. What were you thinking? Can you please share the background of
Yeah,
that?
yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah,
Is that the most, is that an important question? That seems like an important question to ask today.
well, I am a serial entrepreneur, right? And I've done a number of different things, and I had no idea that I was an entrepreneur because I come from, like, no one in my family had ever even worked in business,
Mm-hmm.
right? My dad did like plumbing work on the side. My dad was a phys ed teacher, and he did plumbing work on the side to make extra money. But my family was workers, right? And a lot of civil servants, and I'm proud of my roots and tremendous strong work ethic. Um, and Russell, if I had really followed my heart when I was an undergrad, I actually would have been a football coach.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up going into business. My dad grew up really poor, and my dad had what we call, it's like a psychological thing, like a scarcity mindset,
Sure.
right? If you grew up poor, my dad was one of nine, shared a room with four brothers. I mean, you're literally like competing with your siblings for food sometimes, right? And so my dad, that mindset continued with him as a father. And my dad was a wonderful father, but we heard those messages a lot. Like, you have to ask if you can eat food in your own house, right? If you grew up in Boston, if the doors open during the winter time, you're chastised for wasting energy, right? Like, what do you think I'm heating the bleeping backyard, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these messages of scarcity, which is the opposite of abundance, right? So think of that mindset. It's really important. If you think the world is abundant and it has everything for me and for everyone else, you go through life with a different attitude than scarcity. There's not enough, right? And I have to scrap and fight and do whatever I can to get what I need, right? The emotional state that you have going through life is going to be very different, right? And the latter is going to be more anxious, right? More tense, et cetera. So I thought, Russell, and this was self-imposed, but I thought I was supposed to go make money, right? Especially, I went to an Ivy League school. That's what
Mm-hmm.
most of the guys did: investment banking, consulting, et cetera. So that's how I ended up on Wall Street. And I was like, whoa, cool. I get to go do this thing and wear a suit and tie every day and make money. And it was, there's a romantic element of that was attractive. So I did that and I learned a ton. What I learned pretty quickly, though, was that I thought it was boring. kind of a cog in a wheel, right? And like once I made a little bit of money, it was like, I don't know, it felt kind of like vacuous, right? A little bit empty. Tech was different. Got into tech. Tech was cool. It was like, whoa, you can see the impact we're having. So I was in tech from like 97 to 04, gradually figuring out that what I love is like the high growth, creative part of it. And my last job, Russell, so I became an entrepreneur really because my last job was a bad fit. I took a job with a big telecommunications company, Sprint, now part of T-Mobile, wonderful people in their innovative e-business group, which really wasn't that innovative. And it was hard to get deals done. There wasn't a lot of flexibility or creativity, and I just felt stifled. So I had just finished my MBA, and I started to think like, I want to do something really creative on my own or whatever. And a good friend of mine that I grew up with in Boston worked for Guinness, the Irish beer company.
Yeah.
Right. And his clients were the highest grossing Irish pubs in the country. And as a good friend of his, he had an expense account. I was the beneficiary of a lot of that. So we used to go out all the time. And if you grew up in Boston, the Irish
Yeah.
cultural presence is massive. So I was very familiar as an Irish pub patron. And Russell, I wanted to do something, a business that I understood. And I had waited tables earlier, right, to make some extra money. So he was like, hey, man, these places do really well. And I was like, oh, that'd be cool. And Madison, Wisconsin, which is where I live, didn't have an Irish pub at the time, like a high-end one. So kind of researched it and said, I think we could give this a shot, like not knowing much about that business at all. So I wrote a business plan and presented it to one bank in 2004, very different lending climate. I had never run a business before, never mind a restaurant. And the bank said, sure, we'll finance you. So it was cool and made so many mistakes, but we ended up, having 3 locations, and we built, a cool $5 million brand. We had a great culture. We had a wonderful, wonderful team, like probably the funnest place I've ever worked. It was really fun. And, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be a business owner, the best internship you could ever have is starting a business.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was great. Made so many mistakes, but somehow the concept was good.
Yes.
Right concept at the right time. And we were able to go on a pretty good run. It was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, Cliff, what I appreciate so much about our time today is I like hearing what Brainheart does. Like, this is really valuable, and I think super valuable for our listeners. It's most interesting to me to learn more about the brain and the heart behind Brainheart, because we live in a world of stories, and you have a great story, and your why is so impactful that makes the what you do feel very meaningful. And I'm sure it is for the clients that you impact.
Well, thank you, Russell. I really appreciate that. Simon Sinek, right? Another positive psychologist. What is your why, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned something earlier, Russell, about losing track of time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's a thing called the flow state, right? Which is another one of my favorite positive psychologists. We're not going to get his name right. He just passed away last year, Csikszentmihalyi, right? Mm-hmm. He had this concept of flow, right? And flow is a psychological state, a neurological state that we can get into when you're doing something that requires a very high level of skill and a very high level of enjoyment. Mm-hmm. So when you're saying like LeBron James is in the zone, he literally is in the zone. Mm-hmm. Or you watch someone playing violin or painting or doing whatever it is, right? And I do feel, Russell, it was a very non-traditional path, but this is kind of zone flow work for us, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? And I am so grateful that have the opportunity to do that work. But it took a while. And remember, Russell, what I said earlier, right? Like in my heart, I felt a long time ago, be a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I let my brain kind of like veto that, right? But so now it's kind of more heart, right? And I think business done with heart is better.
Mm-hmm.
I really do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting now with, AI and tech and all this stuff, right? Isn't it amazing the emphasis and the need that we're having for people with soft skills?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, man, it comes down to the humans.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot about soft skills lately. I couldn't agree with you more. Cliff, thank you so much. This was terrific. If people want to get a hold of you, www.brainheartgrowth.com.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
www.brainheartgrowth.com. I see you on LinkedIn. You're not a hard guy to find, but we'll make sure that your information's in the show notes. Thank you for bringing this topic to the community. If we are going to truly help business owners get and stay in their genius zone, I am 99% confident that that area is probably not around selling, but is around helping people solve problems. My guess is that business owners really want to spend more time doing that, and you're helping them unlock it. So thank you.
You are welcome, Russell. This was an absolute delight and honor, and I always want to make sure I express my gratitude. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks again, Cliff, and thanks everybody for listening today. We will see you on the next episode of the Stride to Freedom podcast. Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.